Remember more, mastering the art of retention. Hi, I'm Teacher Luke, and welcome to this story on the art of retention. Chapter 1: The Science of Memory. Let me begin with a question for you. When was the last time you forgot something important? Maybe you were in the middle of speaking English and a word you needed simply disappeared. Maybe you couldn't remember where you left your keys. Or perhaps you studied for a test, and when you sat down in the exam room, your mind went completely blank. Can you picture that moment? How did it feel? Perhaps it was frustrating. Perhaps you felt embarrassed. Or maybe you laughed at yourself and moved on. Here's another question. What's one small trick you already use to help yourself remember things? Maybe you keep lists on your phone. Maybe you repeat words to yourself out loud. Maybe you ask a friend to quiz you. Take a moment to think about it, and if you'd like, write your answer in the comments. Your simple trick might be exactly the thing another learner is looking for. Now let's step into the fascinating world of memory. Memory is at the center of everything we do. We read books, we watch videos, we have conversations, but none of it really matters if the information doesn't stay with us. Imagine trying to learn a new language but forgetting every word the day after you learn it. Imagine training for a new job but losing the instructions as soon as your boss walks away. Without memory, learning simply doesn't exist. The trouble is, memory doesn't work like a perfect video camera. It doesn't record everything in perfect detail and store it forever. Instead, memory is more like a living map. On this map, some paths are wide and well-traveled, and we can walk them easily. Other paths fade away if we don't use them. They grow over with weeds, and in time, they disappear completely. Scientists usually explain memory as having three main stages: encoding, storage, and retrieval. Let's explore them slowly in a way that makes sense without heavy scientific words. The first stage is encoding. This is when you first meet new information. Imagine that you are reading a new English word. Your brain takes the sound of the word, the way it looks on the page, maybe even a picture or feeling connected to it, and it turns all of this into a mental code. Think of it like writing a note to yourself. If you pay close attention, the note is clear. If you are distracted, the note is messy and hard to read later. That's why studying with your phone buzzing beside you often fails. Your brain doesn't know which signal is important. The second stage is storage. At first, information goes into short-term memory. Short-term memory is like a small desk in front of you. You can only put a few items on it at one time. A phone number, a shopping list, a word or two. They can stay there for a few minutes, but then they fall off the desk unless you do something with them. To keep them longer, they need to move into long-term memory. Long-term memory is like a huge library with endless shelves, but books don't appear on those shelves automatically. They need strong signals to tell the brain, this is valuable, keep it safe. The third stage is retrieval. This is when you need to bring the information back. You go into the library, find the shelf, pull down the book, and open it again. Sometimes retrieval works instantly, like remembering your best friend's name. Other times it feels impossible, like when you know a word, but it is stuck on the tip of your tongue. The memory is still there, but the path to it is blocked. Now let's talk about forgetting, because forgetting happens to all of us. Sometimes it's because of decay. If you never use a memory, it fades, like footprints washed away by the tide. Sometimes it's because of interference. If you learn two similar things, they can block each other. Think of trying to learn Spanish and Italian at the same time. The words fight for space in your brain. And sometimes forgetting happens because you simply can't retrieve the memory at the right moment. You know it's there, but stress or nerves block the way. That's why you might blank during a test only to remember everything once the exam is over. The good news is that there are powerful ways to help memory stick. The first is attention. When you give full focus, your brain receives the message, this is important. The second is repetition, but not endless repetition in one day. The best method is spaced repetition. Review today, again tomorrow, then in a few days, then next week. Each review strengthens the path. The third is meaning and emotion. We naturally remember things that touch us. Our first day at school, a song that moved us, a funny mistake in another language, and finally, rest. Sleep is one of the most underrated tools for learning. During sleep, your brain organizes information, moving memories from the messy desk of short-term memory into the shelves of long-term storage. Let me give you a story. Anna, one of my English students, studied 10 new words every evening. She repeated them again and again before bed. But the next morning, she could only remember 2. She felt like a failure. I suggested a change, fewer words, more depth. She chose 3 words instead of 10. She made sentences, drew pictures, even texted her friend using them. The next day, she reviewed them quickly. A week later, she still remembered almost all of them. Why? Because she focused, she repeated over time, and she gave the words meaning. Think for a moment about your own study. Do you often rush to cover too much? What would happen if you slowed down, chose less, and went deeper? Pause for a second and reflect. And if you'd like, share your thought in the comments. So, memory is not magic. It's a process. If we respect the process, attention, repetition, meaning, and rest, we can turn fragile knowledge into lasting memory. As we close this first chapter, let me leave you with a question. What is one small change you can make this week to strengthen your memory? Will you turn off distractions while you study? Will you review tomorrow instead of waiting until the night before a test? Will you connect new words with emotions? Write your answer in the comments. Someone else may be inspired by your idea. Chapter 2. Active Reading and Learning Strategies. Let's begin with another question. When you read, do you usually let your eyes just drift across the page, moving from one word to the next? Or do you stop, think, and interact with the text as you go? And here's another question for you. Do you already have a special trick that helps you stay focused while reading? Maybe you highlight, maybe you take notes, maybe you whisper the words aloud. If you do, write it in the comments. You might give another learner a new idea. The truth is, passive reading doesn't work very well. You can sit with a book for an hour, highlighting every line, but a week later, most of it has vanished. That's because the brain doesn't hold onto information it hasn't worked with. To remember more, we need active reading. Imagine 2 students again. Maria sits down with her textbook. She highlights almost every sentence. By the end, her page glows yellow, but when she closes the book, she can't explain what she read. David reads the same chapter. After each section, he pauses. He asks, "What's the main idea? How does this connect to what I already know?" He even explains it out loud. A week later, David remembers. Maria does not. The difference is clear. David read actively. So how do we read actively? Let me share a few strategies. The first is asking questions. Don't just accept what you read. Challenge it. If you're reading about climate change, ask, why is this happening? How does it affect me? Do I agree with this explanation? The brain remembers what it has questioned. Another strategy is summarizing in your own words. After a section, close the book and explain the idea to yourself, as if you are teaching it to a friend. If you can't explain it, you know where you need to review. Note-taking also helps, but not by copying long sentences. Try short points, diagrams, or even small drawings. Notes should be like signposts that guide you back to the main ideas. And don't forget spaced repetition. Review the material not just once, but several times over days and weeks. Each review strengthens the memory path. One of the most powerful techniques is self-testing. Cover the page and ask, "What did I just read?" Write a question in your notebook, then answer it without looking. Even making mistakes helps because testing forces your brain to retrieve information. Retrieval strengthens memory more than rereading ever can. Let me tell you a story from my own life. When I was at university, I had to study a heavy textbook on linguistics. I did what many students do. I underlined, I highlighted, I copied entire paragraphs into my notebook. But when exam time came, I realized something terrible. I couldn't recall most of it. The pages looked familiar, but the ideas weren't in my head. One of my professors, Professor Clark, gave me advice that changed everything. He said, "Luke, stop painting your book yellow. Start teaching it to yourself." At first I laughed. Teach myself? To an empty room. But I tried it. I read a section, closed the book, and explained it out loud as if I were the professor. Sometimes I stumbled. Sometimes I couldn't explain. That showed me exactly where my understanding was weak. Step by step, my knowledge grew stronger. Later, as a teacher myself, I passed this method to my students. Many of them found the same thing. Teaching, even to yourself, makes learning stick. There are also structured methods you can try. One famous one is called SQ3R, Survey, Question, Read, Recite, Review. First, you survey the chapter, looking quickly at headings and pictures. Then, you ask questions about what you are about to read. Next, you read carefully. After that, you recite or explain the main ideas in your own words. Finally, you review later. This method keeps your brain active the whole way through. Another is the Cornell note system. You divide your page into two columns. On one side, you write notes as you read. On the other side, you write questions or key words. At the bottom, you write a short summary. Later, you can cover one side and test yourself. This way, your notes become an active tool, not just a passive record. Think about your own habits for a moment. Do you read actively or passively? Do you take notes or do you simply underline? Pause for a second, and if you want, share your habit in the comments. So active reading isn't about working harder, it's about working smarter. The time you spend with a book or lesson becomes more valuable when you interact with the material. As we end this chapter, I want to ask you one more question. Which strategy will you try in your next study session? Will you ask questions, summarize, take Cornell notes, try SQ3R, test yourself? Write your choice in the comments. You may encourage someone else to try it too. Chapter 3. Making what you learn stick. We've come to our final chapter. Let me begin with one more question. Have you ever studied hard for something? Maybe for an exam, maybe a list of vocabulary, only to discover a month later that most of it had slipped away? And here's another. Do you already have one special technique that helps new knowledge stay with you? Think about it. And if you'd like, write your answer in the comments. You might inspire another learner. Learning is exciting when it's new. You read, you listen, you feel motivated. But knowledge is slippery. It often slides away like water running through your fingers. This chapter is about making learning stick, not just for today, not just for the exam, but for life. The first principle is simple. Use it or lose it. If you learn a new word, don't just keep it in a notebook. Use it in a sentence. Say it in a conversation. Write it in a message. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. This is true for all knowledge. If you study history, talk about it at dinner. If you read about psychology, apply one idea to your own life. The brain remembers what is practical and used. Another method is to make associations and stories. Our brains love images and connections. If you learn the word anchor, don't just repeat the definition. Picture a heavy anchor dropping into the sea, keeping a ship steady. Then connect it. Learning good habits is like dropping an anchor in the stormy sea of life. That story makes the word unforgettable. And teaching is one of the most powerful tools. There is a saying, if you want to learn deeply, teach it. When you explain an idea to someone else, you are forced to organize your thoughts clearly. Even if you teach to a friend who isn't studying or to yourself in the mirror, the act of teaching strengthens memory like nothing else. Regular review is also essential. Learning is like planting a seed. You can't water it once and expect it to grow. You need small, regular watering. Review quickly the next day, again at the end of the week, then again after a month. It doesn't take long, but it keeps knowledge alive. And don't forget emotion. We remember emotional experiences easily. Our first day at school, a song that moved us, a mistake that made us laugh. Emotion acts like glue. So, when you learn, try to connect the information to your own feelings or experiences. Let me tell you another story from my life. When I was training to be a teacher, I had to learn a thick manual of classroom strategies. I read it carefully, I highlighted, I made notes. But when I stood in front of real students, my mind went blank. I had read the strategies, but they didn't stick. I realized I needed to practice them, not just read them. So each week I chose one strategy and used it in class. One week, I practiced giving clear instructions. Another week, I practiced using positive language. Slowly, these strategies became part of me. Today, years later, I still use them, not because I memorized a book, but because I lived them. This is the key. Knowledge sticks when we use it, when we connect it, when we teach it, when we review it, and when we give it meaning. There are also tools that can help. Flashcards are simple but powerful. You can carry them with you, test yourself for a few minutes, and keep memories alive. Digital apps like Anki or Quizlet use spaced repetition automatically, showing you a card just before you are about to forget it. Journaling is another tool. Writing about what you learned each day helps reinforce the knowledge and connects it to your own life. Pause for a moment and think. Which of these methods appeals to you? Which one do you want to try first? Write it in the comments. So as we close this book, let me leave you with a final thought. Learning is not just about today. It's not just for passing an exam or finishing a course. Learning is for life. When you make your knowledge stick, you carry it with you into every conversation, every decision, every future challenge. And here is my last question for you. What is one new technique you will try this week to make your learning stick? Will you use new vocabulary in a message? Will you tell a story with it? Will you teach it to a friend? Write your answer in the comments. Sharing your plan might encourage someone else to do the same. Remember this, when you make your learning stick, you are not just studying, you are building a stronger mind, a deeper memory, and a better future. Thanks for listening.